Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in life when you begin to understand something simple, yet life-changing. The weight you've been carrying was never really yours. You've taken on every harsh word, every disapproving glance, every quiet dismissal like it was carved into your worth. And there comes a point when you look around and think, how much more of this can I hold? But maybe the answer isn't to keep holding it all. Maybe real strength doesn't come from carrying everything, but from knowing what to put down. And sometimes that means learning to stop caring so much, not because your heart has gone cold, but because it's finally grown wise. This isn't about pretending you don't feel. It's about feeling fully, then choosing not to be ruled by those feelings. It's about standing in the storm, not because you're untouched by it, but because you've decided your peace isn't up for negotiation. You don't need to respond to every voice, every opinion, every provocation. Some things are best left unanswered when you act as though you don't care in the moments that ask for distance. What you're really doing is protecting what matters. You're saying, without shouting, "This doesn't define me." And that quiet refusal to be shaken is where freedom begins. The heaviest burdens aren't always the loud ones. Sometimes it's the invisible pressure to please, to prove, to be accepted. You carry the weight of other people's expectations like an invisible pack strapped to your back. And over time, that kind of emotional labor wears you thin. Detachment isn't numbness, it's clarity. It's stepping outside of that constant loop of needing to be understood, validated, admired. When every slight cuts deep, you bleed out energy that should be fueling your own path. But when you start observing instead of absorbing, you create space. And in that space, something powerful happens. You begin to breathe again. The problem isn't that you care. It's that you've cared so much for so long about things that were never worthy of your energy, approval, status image. None of these can give you peace, yet you've let them define your value. When your sense of worth rises and falls with someone else's mood or opinion, you've given away the reins. Detachment gives them back, not to make you indifferent, but to make you sovereign. You start to understand that the only voice you must live with every day is your own. And when that voice grows calm and certain, the outside world starts to lose its grip. Think about the people who move through conflict without losing their center. They don't fight every battle, not because they're weak, but because they've learned which ones matter. They've cultivated the ability to stay rooted while everything around them spins. That's what emotional detachment gives you. Not an escape from emotion, but a filter, a pause, a choice. You stop reacting to every push and pull, and instead begin to respond with intention. In that space between what happens and how you handle it, there's immense power. You're no longer operating from fear or ego. You're choosing from strength. Detachment doesn't ask you to shut your heart. It simply asks you to stop handing it over to everyone who reaches for it. You learn to hold space for your feelings without being swept away by them. Your sensitivity becomes something you manage, not something that manages you. This kind of strength doesn't come with armor made of steel. It's more like tempered glass, strong, clear, flexible. You begin to ask yourself, is this worth my peace? And more often than not, the answer is no. You become selective, not cynical, grounded, not guarded. When you seem like you don't care, what you're really doing is preserving what's sacred inside you. The truth is, caring too much opens the door to being used. When people sense that your identity hinges on their approval, they can twist that. They can make you doubt yourself, lead you down paths that weren't yours to walk. Detachment breaks that pattern. It teaches you how to draw a quiet line between what's you and what isn't. You learn when to walk away, when to say no, when to protect your own narrative. You stop living in reaction to everyone else and start living in alignment with yourself. This isn't coldness. This is inner peace. And in the end, you don't lose your heart. You just stop giving it away to those who never earned it. When you stop caring about the opinions of people who don't support or uplift you, you stop giving them permission to shape your reality. You reclaim your emotional space and energy, and with that, you begin to rebuild your sense of power. You're no longer at the mercy of someone else's mood, approval, or attention. Instead, you become grounded in something deeper, your own sense of self. This is what emotional detachment really means. It's not indifference and it's not avoidance. It's a conscious, repeated choice to not give your power away to things that don't serve you. It's the quiet strength of knowing that not every opinion deserves a reaction and not every judgment needs to be absorbed. Detachment isn't an overnight change. It's a daily practice, a mental reset that allows you to stop internalizing every rude comment, every disappointment, every unfair moment. You still feel things, but you no longer carry them with you. You don't let someone else's behavior become your burden. And that kind of release takes discipline. It takes courage, especially when your instincts tell you to defend yourself or shut down. But the more you practice this way of being, the stronger your inner peace becomes. You learn that it's not your job to hold every emotion that passes through your space. Not every wave is meant to pull you under. When you detach in the right way, your resilience grows. You stop seeing failure as a personal blow and instead begin to view it as something separate from your identity. Setbacks are no longer proof of inadequacy. They're just part of the process. You begin to realize that disappointment is temporary, but your calm can be permanent if you guard it. You start to recognize that your emotional stability is your most valuable asset, and no one else should have the power to shake it without your permission. Caring too much, especially about things outside your control, will drain you. When your self-worth is wrapped around how others see you or what results you achieve, you're always chasing something that can be taken away. But detachment helps you shift that. You no longer need constant reassurance. You stop tying your identity to external outcomes or people's fleeting approval. You start to love yourself in a way that doesn't change with circumstance. That doesn't mean you shut down. There's a fine line between healthy detachment and emotional withdrawal. True detachment is about balance. Too little of it and you get overwhelmed. Too much and you become disconnected from the world. The goal isn't to stop feeling. It's to stop allowing those feelings to run your life. You begin to care wisely. You learn when to hold on and when to release. That kind of discernment is self-respect. It's emotional maturity, and it becomes a powerful form of protection. Acting like you don't care in the right context is not coldness. It's a boundary. It's you saying, my energy is sacred. My peace is non-negotiable. You draw that line not because you're bitter, but because you've learned that not everyone deserves access to your heart. You've discovered that emotional availability doesn't mean emotional vulnerability to those who haven't earned your trust. You begin to protect your spirit not out of fear, but out of wisdom. At the heart of emotional detachment is radical self-love. It's the belief that you deserve to live unburdened by the chaos others try to hand you. That you deserve respect even when no one's watching. That your worth isn't tied to performance, perfection, or popularity. And with that clarity, you become steady. You become calm in a world that thrives on reaction. You no longer jump at every comment, every rejection, every unpredictable twist in the road. You move differently, more deliberately, more peacefully. Your inner peace becomes your home. It's more valuable than wealth, more powerful than approval, more essential than validation. It's the place where your mind quiets, your body rests, and your soul breathes. But the world is full of noise. Noise that wants to pull you out of that place to tempt you into conflict, comparison, and doubt. That's why guarding your peace isn't selfish. It's necessary. Because when your peace is compromised, everything else begins to unravel. Your clarity, your focus, your strength, they all suffer when you allow too much noise in. Most people don't even realize how easily they give away their peace. A small comment turns into hours of rumination. One negative interaction ruins an entire day. Toxic people drain their joy and redirect their focus. They replay arguments that no longer matter. They drown in what-ifs and regrets. This mental clutter builds slowly, but it's corrosive. It steals time, drains energy, and clouds your ability to live in the present. But when you begin to detach, when you choose not to take on every emotion or reaction as your own, something changes. You stop being pulled in every direction. You stop letting the outer world dictate your inner one. And in that space, you begin to reclaim your life, not as a performance for others, but as a quiet, steady act of self-honor. Protecting your inner peace means refusing to get pulled into cycles that drain you. It's the quiet, but firm decision to say no to unnecessary drama and to walk away from anything that unsettles your spirit without good reason. It's about choosing to invest your energy in what uplifts you, not what drags you down. This is where real power begins. You can't protect your peace if you don't understand what threatens it. The first step is awareness, learning to recognize the people, thoughts, habits, and situations that consistently shake your balance. Awareness gives you clarity. It's the light that helps you avoid emotional traps before you fall into them. Sometimes it's subtle. Gossip that clouds your thoughts, news that fuels anxiety, a pattern of comparing yourself to others, or a relationship that constantly drains you. Whatever it is, you must be honest enough to name it, wise enough to understand it, and strong enough to keep it at a distance. Protecting your peace means building boundaries around your emotional and mental space. You are not responsible for fixing other people's chaos, but you are fully responsible for guarding your own calm. The world will always bring noise, distractions, and tests. There will always be people who push your buttons, moments that trigger your fears, and challenges that push you to your edge. But peace isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about learning to stay centered in the middle of it. When you choose to protect your peace, you're not escaping reality. You're learning how to meet it with a calm mind and a steady heart. You're learning to respond instead of react. You stay grounded even when everything around you is uncertain. This isn't something that happens by luck. It's a skill built through practice and intention. You train yourself to treat your peace like the sacred thing it is. And part of that training means learning to let go of what you can't control. You cannot control what others say or do, how they feel, or whether they understand you. Trying to manage what's out of your hands will only exhaust you. The real shift happens when you begin focusing on what you can control. Your thoughts, your reactions, your attitude, and your energy. That's the turning point. That's when you stop carrying burdens that were never yours to begin with. When you let go of what's outside your control, you open space for clarity, growth, and peace to take root. Self-care becomes essential in this process, not as a luxury, but as a foundation. Taking care of yourself is not selfish, it's survival. Your mind needs rest, your heart needs protection, your body needs time to recover, and your spirit needs moments of quiet. The more you care for yourself, the stronger your peace becomes. This might mean turning down obligations, saying no to people pleasing, stepping back from screens, or doing the things that genuinely refill your soul. You cannot show up fully for your life if you're constantly running on empty. Sometimes protecting your peace means walking away from unhealthy relationships, draining environments, or habits that sabotage your well-being. That kind of decision is never easy. It takes courage to choose your growth over your comfort, your healing over your history. But peace and chaos cannot coexist. And if something repeatedly threatens your calm, it cannot stay. Letting go doesn't mean you're weak or unkind. It means you love yourself enough to stop tolerating what harms you. It's an act of inner strength and wisdom. mindfulness, and stillness are also tools that help you stay connected to your peace. When you slow down, when you learn to observe your thoughts without judgment, you create space between yourself and your emotions. You stop being tossed around by every wave. You begin to build an inner refuge, a quiet place inside you that doesn't disappear when life gets loud. And the more often you return to that space, the more natural it becomes to live from it. You train your mind to choose calm over chaos, reflection over reaction. You're not just protecting your peace, you're becoming it. And above all, remember that protecting your peace isn't a one-time decision. It's a lifelong practice. There will be days when you get caught in the noise, when your boundaries slip, when stress sneaks in. That's okay. What matters is that you keep coming back. Every time you choose to return to your peace, you reinforce it. You grow more rooted, more resilient, more free. You stop living from a place of reaction and begin living from a place of deep, steady power. You choose calm instead of chaos, love instead of fear, strength instead of weakness. And that choice transforms everything. It shifts how you view yourself, how you move through life, and how you relate to the world around you. Protect your peace with intention, because it's both your greatest shield and your most sacred gift. When you honor your inner peace, you naturally become a light to others. Your calm is magnetic, your steadiness inspires. You no longer feel the need to match the noise around you. You rise above it. You stop feeding the drama, stop engaging with negativity, and instead become an example of quiet power. Because real strength isn't loud or aggressive, it's grounded, unwavering, and deeply present. You live more consciously. You move with purpose. You become a reflection of authenticity. To protect your peace is to live on your terms, in your truth, and with your heart fully open. And when that becomes your way of life, nothing outside you can break what you've built within. That kind of peace is unstoppable. Have you ever noticed how many people go through life exhausted, overlooked, and emotionally drained? So often, it's because they haven't learned to set clear boundaries. Boundaries that guard their time, protect their energy, and preserve their peace. Without them, it's easy to get used, stretched too thin, or treated like an afterthought. Setting boundaries isn't about shutting people out. It's about respecting yourself enough to define what you will and won't allow. Saying no without guilt isn't rude. It's reclaiming your right to decide how your life is lived. When you stop being available for everyone's demands, you stop being their emotional dumping ground or their last-minute solution. Boundaries are the invisible fences that protect your inner world. And when you build them strong, you create a life where your well-being isn't constantly under threat. Too many people are afraid of setting boundaries because they've been taught that it makes them selfish or unkind. They fear disappointing others or being seen as difficult. But the truth is, boundaries are a deep expression of self-love. When you say "this is my limit," you're not rejecting someone. You're choosing to honor yourself. It's not a lack of care for others. It's the presence of care for yourself. You cannot continue to give from an empty cup. And every time you let your boundaries be crossed, you deplete your spirit just a little more. Learning to set boundaries without apology is about embracing your worth. It's about showing the world how to treat you by first treating yourself with dignity. And yes, once you start setting boundaries, you will face pushback. People who benefited from your silence or self-sacrifice may resist your change. They may question you, guilt you, or even lash out. But this is where your strength has to meet your clarity. Boundaries are not meant to isolate you. They're meant to protect you. They aren't walls that keep love out. They are gates that keep toxicity from flowing in. You don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing peace. You don't need to defend your right to say no. This is your life, your space, your responsibility. The more you stand firm, the more others begin to adjust. And the more you realize how much power you've had all along. Setting unapologetic boundaries also means knowing your limits and respecting them. You're not invincible. You're not limitless. You have needs, emotional bandwidth, and thresholds that deserve your protection. When you begin to honor those limits, you create a model for others to follow. You show them that self-respect is non-negotiable, that your time matters, that your energy isn't available to be wasted. You stop tolerating subtle disrespect. You stop justifying emotional drain. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. And in doing so, you change not only how you live, but how the world responds to you. There's often confusion around boundaries, as if they're about punishment or rejection, but they're not. Boundaries are an act of care. They protect your peace and your relationships. Saying no to what depletes you is saying yes to what restores you. Distancing yourself from negativity isn't cruel, it's necessary. Refusing to accept disrespect isn't aggressive, it's healthy. Boundaries create the framework for genuine connection. Without them, resentment builds, communication erodes, chaos grows. But with them, relationships become more honest, respectful, and fulfilling. When you learn to set boundaries without apology, you stop waiting for others to value you and begin to show them how. And that single shift can redefine your life. Learning to set boundaries without apology begins with learning to say no with clarity, with kindness, and without guilt. It doesn't require harshness or confrontation. It requires self-respect. Saying no calmly and confidently is a skill that gets easier with time and practice. And each time you do it, you send a message not only to others but to yourself that your time, your energy, and your well-being matter. You break the cycle of people-pleasing and make space for more honest, respectful relationships. This is how you reclaim your peace and protect your power. You stop living to meet expectations that exhaust you, and you start living in alignment with your truth. Unapologetic boundaries also begin with honesty, the kind that requires looking inward. You must define what you will and will not allow, what drains your spirit, what behaviors cross the line, what demands compromise your joy or clarity. Once you know where your boundaries lie, you're less vulnerable to manipulation, less susceptible to guilt, and far more connected to your sense of self. You build protection around your spirit that allows love, compassion, and trust to flow in, but keeps confusion, disrespect, and resentment out. This inner clarity is liberating. It releases you from the weight of indecision and the cost of compromise. There will be moments when guilt creeps in, when fear or doubt whispers that you're being too harsh, too distant, too selfish. But each time you honor your limits with intention, you rewrite your story. You send yourself a powerful message. I matter. My peace matters. And though the discomfort of setting boundaries may come and go, the strength you gain from it stays. You learn to trust yourself. You build a solid foundation, one where your worth is no longer up for negotiation. The more you live this truth, the more respect you receive not just from others, but from yourself. You become your own advocate, your own protector, your own steady voice in the noise. You stop asking for permission to live your life and begin to claim it fully. Boundaries then become more than rules. They become the framework of your freedom. They mark the path to a more grounded, fulfilling life. When you uphold your limits with love and firmness, you create a life rooted in dignity and purpose. Setting boundaries without apology isn't just a skill. It's a quiet revolution. It's the decision to stop playing small, to stop being the peacekeeper at the expense of your own peace. It's choosing strength over silence, clarity over confusion, and power over passivity. When you do this consistently, you no longer live in fear of rejection or conflict. You live in the confidence of your truth. That is where real freedom begins. And just as boundaries protect your energy, silence protects your strength. Silence is not emptiness. It's not weakness. It's not surrender. It's a form of power so deep and steady that most people overlook it. In a world that never stops talking, that demands instant reactions and constant explanations, silence becomes your refuge. It's the place where your mind settles, your emotions soften, and your inner voice finally has space to be heard. There's strength in choosing stillness when everything around you is noisy. There's courage in holding your peace when chaos tempts you to react. Silence allows you to listen not just to others, but to yourself. It sharpens your awareness. You start hearing what's not being said. You begin to recognize patterns, sense truths, and act with intention instead of impulse. Silence isn't passive. It's the space where you gather your strength before choosing your next move. The strongest people aren't always the loudest. They're often the ones who've mastered the art of restraint, who know when to speak and when to be still. Their silence commands respect because it's not rooted in fear. It's rooted in discipline. That kind of silence becomes a shield. It protects your peace from unnecessary conflict, and it guards your focus from distractions that lead nowhere. In silence, you reflect. You confront your fears, your doubts, and your pain without distraction. You see things more clearly when you stop trying to explain yourself to everyone. You begin to wait, not with anxiety but with patience. You face life with more clarity, not because you've escaped the noise, but because you've learned not to let it in. The world may push you to speak, defend, or prove yourself. But silence teaches you that you don't have to. You don't have to explain your boundaries. You don't have to justify your healing. You don't owe anyone an argument to validate your choices. There is immense power in simply standing firm, in honoring your truth quietly and completely. Silence is not the absence of power. It is the presence of it held with grace. When you embrace that, you begin to live from a place no one can shake. Silence can be your most powerful statement. It says, "I am enough," without needing an audience. It says, "I trust my direction," without seeking approval. When you embrace the strength of silence, you stop wasting your breath on those who don't hear you or won't value what you offer. You begin to conserve your energy, choosing your words with purpose and your moments with intention. Quiet confidence becomes your language. It's magnetic because it doesn't demand attention. It commands it through presence alone. Silence also serves as a shield when others try to provoke you, drag you into conflict, or disrupt your peace. Choosing silence is not retreat, it's strategy. Walking away from unnecessary battles isn't weakness, it's clarity. You don't need to prove your worth to those committed to misunderstanding you. You don't need to explain your choices to anyone who questions your peace. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. In that pause, you maintain your power. In that restraint, you draw the line that chaos cannot cross. Your silence held with intention speaks louder than any defense. But silence is more than resistance. It's also a gateway to deeper understanding. When you quiet your voice, you create space to listen. Truly listen. You begin to hear not just what is said, but what is meant. You sense unspoken emotions, pain, truth, and vulnerability in others. This is where empathy lives. This is how connection begins. Silence opens the heart to wisdom rather than judgment. And when you become a calm, listening presence in a world that rarely stops talking, you become someone others trust and seek in their storm. There are also moments when silence becomes the space where you find yourself again. When your thoughts are loud, when your emotions are scattered, when the world feels too fast, silence brings you home. It's in stillness that your inner voice rises above the noise.